just a bunch of us who are interested in security, might be doing it as careers eventually, coming together, I guess, as a community. And yeah, we just learn together and hold events for other uni students. So today, what we want to do is take you guys through a beginner kind of introduction to security, kind of how to change your mindset from the more engineering approach where you're just looking at solving a problem and producing a solution to a problem, to a more broader, now I have a solution to something. How can I break into the solution? How can I attack it? And how can I find ways to kind of just like, I guess, patch up that solution so that it's even stronger in the future. So that's kind of what we're going to be focusing on. And of course, things like how can we take this into like a career and what types of tools and techniques do we use to actually do this kind of process. So yeah, that's what you have to look forward to. But first, we can do a quick Kahoot, which will be a bit of a get to know us. So I'll just start that one and yeah. Cool. Okay. Oh yeah, like Ada said in the chat, just a note, this session will be recorded, but yeah, feel free to turn your mics on and type in the chat if you're more comfortable with it. Probably get started, pop a quick message in the chat if you haven't joined yet. Otherwise, I think that might be everyone. Cool. Bit of a controversial start. Oh, okay. So most people don't think it's, I would have probably went with yes, but they're both fine. Wow, 50-50 split. I don't really watch Pokemon, but I probably would have just said true. Okay, that's good that most people are the blue and the green. I guess we'll try and change your mind if you didn't come here on your own terms. Yeah, I would agree. I think the egg, but again, that's such a controversial opinion. Okay, cool. Some people voted for blue. This picture down in the corner is a photo of some of the people in our society. We were on our way to a security conference in Canberra. So that was the photo there. And this one here is pretty much like the head lecturer of security at UNSW. His name's Richard Buckland. And you might see him around open days if you go to uni, because he's also in charge of first year experience. So he gives a lot of the intro talks. But yeah, if you do a security course at UNSW, you will most likely have him as your lecturer. Cool. Okay. Most people got it right. We aren't from Sydney Uni. That's not right. And no, we're not actually a secret. We're very much public. Okay, so this is a fact about me. Wow, nobody thinks that I performed at the Opera House. That was actually true. And it's honestly my greatest achievement thus far in my life. Yeah, I like music, but I don't listen to Spotify. And I've never read Harry Potter before.
Wow, most of you got that correct. Yes, I listen to a lot of Spotify. Few people chose Harry Potter fan account. I was really into Harry Potter, but not enough to run a fan account for it. So we'll move on to the next one.
So that was a 50-50 chance out of the options left, and I did run a Harry Potter fan account. Cool.
Wow, so fast.
Yeah, I guess it was the only option left. I'm Michael. I share a birthday with Wikipedia, and I think it's a very reliable source, despite what some teachers may say.
Well done, Helen M and MZ. Also Noah and Steph. Oh, okay. Let's jump into some content now. Okay, so just before we start with teaching you what we have to go through today, we'd just like to give you a brief on our good faith policy. So it's something that at UNSW we have before all of our security lectures. It just makes sure that everything that we teach you, you understand that you'll only use the skills you gain for ethical reasons. So not just whatever the law tells you to do, but consider that people's privacy is something you should respect, and to just be considerate when you're using the techniques that we do teach you. And if you're going to try any of these techniques in real life, you always do need to get permission. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so at the beginning of today's I guess, workshop, I mentioned something about swapping your mindsets from that kind of engineering type of building and making solutions to things to more of that attacker mindset, where you're already given a solution and now you're going to try and break it. So in security, I guess that mindset swap is something that's a little bit tricky for people because we've spent our whole lives just solving problems and coming up with solutions to things. So for example, like if I decide that I'm going to build some sort of product, it could be something huge like a bridge, or it could be something small like I just want to cook myself some nice dinner. I'll be pretty proud of what I produce, and I don't like to poke holes in what I produce because I'm the person that made it and I'm proud, right? But what we like to do as security engineers is we will take that product and we will try our best to poke holes in it and find little places that we can break into. So it's not always going to be the most obvious thing. You're going to have to be pretty creative and think quite outside the box. But when you do, and when you do find that position, fixing that is something that's super important and something that as a security professional is like very, very rewarding. Cool. So this is a warm-up exercise just to get you guys to start thinking a bit outside of the box. So you're an electrician, and in front of you is a light hanging from the ceiling, and behind you is a light switch on the wall, and the light is currently on. So just type in the chat, what are some ways that I could turn off this light bulb? So the light bulb's in front of me, there's a switch behind me. How can I turn off the light? Yep. So Eve said, just turn off the switch. Super simple. Jess has said, smash the light. Definitely. Break the light bulb. Yep. Flip the switch. You could just unscrew the light bulb. That's a good one too. Then it's definitely not turning on. A good one here by Avani, you've got ask someone else. Definitely. If I can just convince someone else to turn the light bulb off for me, that's nice and easy. Find the power box thing. Yeah, definitely. So if I found the power box, I could like switch that whole thing off, the one that controls all the electricity in my house, or I could just break that, definitely. And then it's not turning on. Oh my gosh, I could nuke the house. That's, I guess, yeah, the light bulb would not be turning on if I nuked the house, and probably none of the light bulbs in the surrounding city. Turn off power in the house. Yep. Turn off power in the building. Yeah. So maybe it's connected to like a big power block. You can cut that, cut the electricity, could cut the wires. Ooh, a big brain move here. Leave the room. If you don't see it, it's not on. That's good. Yeah. Any other ideas? Cover the light. Yeah. So following a similar type of logic, if I maybe cover the light, it might just look like it's off. Yep. So the good old just cover up technique. Wait until the light bulb dies. Yeah, for sure. And then it won't be turning back on. Cool. Call the electricity company to turn it off. I like that one because it's also a bit of social engineering, because you're going to have to convince them somehow to turn off the power to a house. Might be easier than you think. Cool. Okay. So I like how when we did this, people started with the nice and simple things like flick the switch behind you. And then by the end of it, well, not even in the middle, we ended up with nuke the home. And then at the end, we were looking at things like kind of psychological, like you leave the room, or things like call the electricity company, where you're trying to trick people into turning it off for you. Yeah, so you're not really committing any crimes, or maybe you are. Okay, another exercise. We're not asking you to actually break into a house, but we're asking you to think of 10 ways that you could break into a house. So this is starting to think a bit more like a security professional would, with an actual object that we're trying to protect. So how could we break into a house? Okay, yeah, Annie just said walk into the house. If it's open, if there's a door open, sure thing, you've broken in. Through an open window, a lot of people tend to leave those open too, yep. Gabriella says you could break the window, for sure. You could smash down the door, yep. Walk through the door, through the back door. So a lot of like brute force type of just use force to get in. I like this one, ask someone to open the door for you. Yeah, so maybe it won't even be illegal. What if you just ring the doorbell and ask? Ooh, this one, like a bait and switch. Kashini says, leave an unknown parcel and distract the owner. Yeah, so if you take their attention into something else, then maybe you can slip in. Yep, pretend you're delivering something. Dig a tunnel, definitely could work. Would take a long time, but it would work. You could sneak in through the back door. Someone said FBI, open up. That actually would work, right? Like if you dressed up as a policeman and then rang the doorbell and said, we need to come in, like we need to check something, there's been a robbery, pretend, then people will probably freak out and let you in if you had a good enough disguise. Go through the chimney, good old Santa Claus attack, we like it. Use the spare key they keep under the pot plant. Yeah, that's a common thing. So just exploiting how people are very predictable, right? People probably keep it under a pot plant or in their back garden or under a rug or something like that. I like this one. Make friends with the people inside and then have them invite you in. Again, this is what we call like social engineering and security. Often the weakest point of a company or anything really is the people that produce it or maintain it. So the people that live in the house are probably the easiest thing to attack. If you just become friends with them somehow, and then they'll just naturally invite you in. Yeah, call a locksmith. You could maybe replicate their key somehow, or even just call a locksmith to make a key that fits. You could just walk in, pretend you're from Optus. That's a good one too. So impersonating someone else, kind of like scammers do online where they impersonate Westpac or Optus. You could do it in real life and impersonate the company. Hope the door is a smart door and hack it. Yeah, I mean.
Sorry, Juliana, I accidentally muted you. I was trying to admit someone. Yeah, there we go.
You can hear me now. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Pretend you're from the government. That's a good one too. So any type of authority figure, climb up the top floor and break in. Nice. Okay. Abram's also put a suggestion in there. That's really cool too. Yeah. Okay. Very creative by the end. I personally love the ones that are very social engineering. So pretending to be someone else or even just making friends with the person. What we'll do today later on a bit is how much information we can find out about a person just through like little pieces of photos and things like that. I think that would work as a really good technique if you could find the homeowner on social media, do some of the techniques that we'll describe today, and then become friends with them because you know what they're interested in. I think that could be a really effective method. Cool. Okay, so what was the point of all of that? The point wasn't to learn how to break into a house the best way possible. The point is to transfer these skills and figure out how we can attack any type of secure software or any type of asset that a company might own. So we like to break it down into 4 steps. The first one is what we call reconnaissance. So this is where you're mapping out your attack surface. You're figuring out where those weak points are that you could possibly choose to attack. Often this is when we do problem solving and we come up with a couple ideas on how we're going to solve the problem. We don't always just go with the first idea that comes into our mind because it might cause us issues later on. So it's the same thing with security. Like you guys probably did this subconsciously. You probably came up with like a little floor plan of what a house looks like windows and doors, and then the people that lived in the house. And you thought of all the different assets and how you might exploit each one. The second step is attack. So this is actually selecting something and using it to infiltrate the network, or in our example, the home. Then we have expansion. So often in security, we don't just want to gain access to a system, but we want to gain something valuable. So we either want to escalate our privileges, become like the owner of the system, or we might want to steal user data. So steal usernames and passwords and use them later on. Anything that's kind of a value is what we're looking for, because that's high risk. That's what an attacker would be looking for. And if we can think like an attacker and gain access to systems in similar ways that attackers will, we can stop this from happening and prevent it in the future, like fix it before the problem occurs kind of thing. And then we have obfuscation as well as our last one. Most of the time, we want to be able to hide our attack. So it would be terrible if an attacker got into your network, stole all your usernames and passwords and left without a trace, and you just had no idea that your whole user database was leaked. And yeah, it's just like you had no idea because they left and they didn't leave a trace. So that's why I tend to favor, with the activity we did previously, the solutions that weren't so much brute force. So if you break into a house with the window, then it's going to be really hard to clean up all the glass that you smashed, right? The homeowners will know that their house was broken into. But if we become friends with them and then we break in and then we might steal something, or we don't even break in, we just walk in, and when they're maybe at the bathroom or something, we take something, I doubt that they'll expect that it's us, right? So we can hide our attack and avoid detection. And that's really useful in security as well. So that's about everything. If we're thinking with a different mindset now, what we call the attack mindset rather than the defender mindset. And now we're going to teach you some techniques and tricks to kind of map out your attacks in a better way. So I'm going to hand it over to Abraham now.
Hello. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yep, cool. Okay, so in this section of the workshop, we're going to be covering the concepts of OSINT and OPSEC, and you might be wondering what those two things stand for and what they mean. So OSINT refers to open source intelligence. So that's like any information on someone, some company, a government, or something that we can find just by researching like online or looking through physical items. And we kind of extend upon this concept with the idea of OPSEC, which stands for operational security. So operational security as a whole is kind of like trying to counter open source intelligence by preventing sensitive info from falling into the wrong hands. So this term really came about like with the military, because militaries and governments tend to have secrets that they'd prefer other militaries and governments to not know. So that's what we're going to be covering today. So OSINT, while it was originally like a military concept, it's come to be more relevant in day-to-day life. So what's something we use in our day-to-day lives? For most people, it's probably the internet. And you've probably heard and you're probably aware that you should be pretty careful with what you put out on the internet, but there are some extra things to consider. So any images you post to the internet can say like a lot. So we've got this idea that an image is 1,000 words, and images can say where you are or what you look like, or perhaps even where you're going. So a more famous and recent example was last year, Tony Abbott was taking a flight to Japan, and he decided to go post his boarding pass online. What he didn't realize was that by posting his boarding pass, other people could go on and log into Qantas as him and leak his passport number. And passport numbers are actually pretty powerful because they can be used to identify a person and impersonate a person. And impersonating the former Prime Minister of Australia, I mean, he's a pretty high-risk target, so this was quite an issue. And it's also worth knowing what can be seen by publicly looking at your profile. So like I said, images can reveal quite a lot more than you realize. So we're going to step through some activities to prove this. So we've got a photo here, and at the bottom left, we've got a link so that you can go through and download this photo and take a look at it yourself. So I will type this into chat. There we go. So you should be able to go there and find the image. So our goal for today is to figure out where this image was taken. And as a hint, I'll tell you that it's in the UK. And the way I figured out this was in the UK was by looking at the number plate. So if we take a look at this number plate on the front, I had to center out the number plate for privacy reasons, but we can see that it's a white number plate with a blue strip on the left. And usually number plates with the blue strip mean that it's located somewhere in the European Union. So the European Union consists of about 27 countries, I think. And so we've already narrowed it down from like 200 countries in the world to like just 27. But if we look at the back number plate by looking at that purple van, we can see that it's yellow. And while most people might not know this, a more experienced researcher would be able to tell this was the UK, because only the UK has white front number plates and yellow number plates on the back. So already just from looking at the number plates in this image, we've managed to determine quite a bit. So what I'm going to do now is, hopefully you've all managed to pull up the image yourself. So let's see if you can figure out where this photo was taken. So there's something pretty distinctive in the background. So if you can figure out what that is, that's a pretty good start. But if you want to push yourself, you might be able to figure out exactly where this photo was taken. So I'll give you 3 minutes to try to do that. Let us know if you're having any trouble with accessing the photo. Oh, and try and not put your answers in chat just yet. So we'll wait for the 3 minutes is up so that everyone has some time to look at it. If you're able to give me the name of the street that this was taken on, that'd be really, really good. But I'd be very impressed if you managed to do it within 3 minutes. And that should be about enough time. So does anyone have any ideas? So let's start with the thing in the background. Has anyone managed to identify what that thing in the background is? Yep, it is Windsor Castle. Good job. Was anyone able to figure out exactly what street this was taken on though? High Street, I think that might be close. Let's go and take a look at it. So to start off, we could begin with some Google searches. So first of all, we can see that there's a castle and it's got a flag. So a good place to start would be to look for images with castles and flags in them. So if I search up for castle flag UK, since we know this is in the UK, we get a couple of results and already we can see the flag in the bottom left. That seems to match what we have in the image, and that's called the Royal Standard of the United Kingdom. So if we wanted, we could go visit that Wikipedia page and we can see that that flag only flies over like 3 castles. So that helps us really narrow it down. But luckily enough, we also have a photo of what seems to be the exact same castle in the search results. So if we click on that result, we can see that this seems to be Windsor Castle. So that's super helpful. So to go narrow it down, we could maybe go take a look at it on Google Maps. So if I were to go search for Windsor Castle and go to Windsor Castle in the UK, let's see if we can look at it with a satellite view. And if we go in and look at this castle in 3D. We've even got the flagpole there, and yeah, this building looks like it's the same building. So if we go back to the image we were provided, we can see that we've got the flag up at this angle. So I think if we look at it from this perspective, we've kind of got the same angle as the photo. So we should look around here. Now, if you zoomed in really closely to the photo, you might be able to make out the words "The Royal" on this sign over here. You'd have to zoom in quite a bit, but it does say "The Royal." So if we look around here, we can see a photo and a location of a place called the Royal Windsor. So maybe we should zoom in over here and see if that matches what we've got in the image. So if I go into Street View, we can see that what we've got in this photo seems to match what our photo has. So it looks like we've found the right location. So we've managed to prove that images can really say a lot in terms of where someone is. Usually most pictures don't really have a picture of one of the most famous castles in the world in the background. So maybe this is a little bit easier than most, but sometimes you might be leaking extra information without actually realizing it. So even the number plates thing was quite a simple example of ways that data might be leaked in ways you don't realize. But if we move on, we know that a picture is already 1,000 words, like just from that example, but what if there's extra words associated with the picture that we can't actually see? So this is where we have the concept of metadata. So metadata is any data which describes other data. So for example, if we have an image file, that image file might have some extra data associated with it, such as the title of the image and the author of the image, the location where the image was taken, as well as maybe the camera that was used to take the photo. Songs might also have similar data associated with them. And there's also extra metadata associated with your own computer's file system. So your computer's file system might take logs of the date a file was created and when the file was last modified. I should also say, if anyone has any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat and I will make sure that I get around to it. So here we have another photo, and it's a photo of the police outside somewhere. So you can go back to that link and you should be able to find the same photo. And I think you'll want to use that version of the photo instead of looking at the slides, because there might be some extra information on that version of the photo. So your job here is to figure out when and where this picture was taken. So I think doing the where part is probably the best place to start. And this was an actual exam question that a lot of us had to do for a security course. So security courses have all kinds of fun and strange activities and questions. So I think I'll give you about 2 minutes to do this. Oh, I forgot to note something before. So in terms of looking for metadata for files, say that I've got an MP3 file, I could probably just Google for MP3 metadata tool, and then I'd find an online tool which helps me look at the metadata for an MP3 file. Similarly, if I had a PNG file and I wanted to see the metadata for that, I could Google for PNG metadata tool and I could get similar results on how to look at the metadata for a PNG. So we'll go back to this photo and I'll give you about 2 minutes. Okay, so I think that's been about 2 minutes, so feel free to put your answers in the chat if you think you've figured it out. So a good place to start might be, where was this photo taken? Or even before that, what information were you able to find out about the photo? Someone's got the date right, that's awesome. Ooh, we have an address. I'm not sure if that's quite right, but we'll go take a look and see how we can figure out the address here. Okay, so let's go through this question. So, oh, someone's got the road. Awesome. Yep. So that is Marrickville in New South Wales. So what kind of information were people able to find in this photo? So how were you able to confirm that was New South Wales? Yep, the police jacket tells us it's somewhere in New South Wales. Yep. So if we go through this image and we check the metadata, so we could go online and search for PNG metadata tool because this was a PNG file. So if we were to go visit that website, we'd see bank robbery. So this seems to be some kind of bank robbery, photos taken right after some kind of bank robbery. Do we know what kind of bank this is? We can see that it's got a Westpac logo. So this looks like it's a Westpac bank. So if I were to go Google for bank robbery Westpac, we get a couple of search results, which are along the lines of Marrickville Westpac robs by a man who fled, etc. So maybe we want to go take a look at Marrickville Westpac on Google Maps and see if that matches our image. So if I search for Marrickville Westpac, and we have the Westpac branch in Marrickville, which is, where is it? Over there. Let's zoom in and take a look at Street View and see if that matches. And it looks like we have a match. So that's how we were able to figure out that this was the Marrickville Westpac. But if we go through the search results for bank robbery Marrickville Westpac, we can see that there seems to be a couple of different bank robberies occurring in Marrickville. So there's one on the 21st of February in 2019. There's one that was apparently 2 weeks ago. And there's also someone on Twitter saying there was one on the 16th of October. So we want to figure out when this was actually taken. So what we can do is we can go back and look at that metadata. And the metadata has a creation date for the image. And the creation date for the image is apparently the 16th of October 2020. So if we go look at that image and go look at this tweet, we can see that this tweet was made on the 16th of October. So it's probably the same incident. And the incident wasn't even a bank robbery. It was actually apparently a hoax bomb threat. So we had to rely on the metadata quite a bit to solve this problem. But what if we could do this without looking at the metadata? So back when we had this as an exam question, I didn't think of checking the metadata for some reason. So I solved it a different way. So it looks like a New South Wales police car, and we can confirm it's the New South Wales police by looking at the badge on that person's shoulder. And we can also see that there's a street sign in the background on the very left. And the thing with street signs in New South Wales and most places is that street signs tend to be specific to a local council area. And local councils aren't that big, so you can narrow it down to a few suburbs. So once you've done that and you've recognized that this street sign might be from like the Inner West Council in Sydney, then you can say, hey, this could be Marrickville, and you zoom in to check like different Westpacs in that council, and that's how you'd confirm that. Here was a solution that one of my friends had to this question, which was, if you look in the top right, you can see that there is a real estate agent, well, a sign for a real estate agency. So if you've seen this sign before, you might be able to identify that it's Rain and Horn. But if you didn't know that, like an attacker could just Google the RHC in the bottom left of that sign and Google RHC real estate, and they'd figure out it's Rain and Horn. So now all they need to do is look through all the phone numbers for Rain and Horn and see if there's any Rain and Horns which have the same 2 first digits. Okay, so we've looked through a bunch of images, and now we're going to talk about like intelligence that you might be leaving out there in your day-to-day life physically. So when we throw out our trash, we kind of expect that our trash doesn't really go anywhere. It just goes straight to the dump. But like someone could go through your trash and find out a lot about you. So in this case, these images have been provided by someone with consent. So don't actually go through dumpsters and trash bins to find pieces of rubbish, because A, that's not very ethical. B, you probably don't want to get your hands dirty. And C, and probably most importantly, it's possibly / probably also a crime, and doing crimes isn't ideal. So we have a link here to the same folder, and inside there should be a folder called dumpster diving. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split you into breakout rooms, and I hope that you can get to know the other people in your breakout room. So feel free to turn on your mics and cameras to talk to the others. And your goal is to go through the photos in that folder and see what you can find out about this person. So perhaps you can figure out their name, their gender, and all sorts of other things about them, their dietary habits, what they're into, etc. So I'm going to start out the breakout rooms. And yep, there we go. So let's continue on. So what stuff were people able to find out about this person? So they're all the same person. Was anyone able to like start off with a name perhaps? Was anyone able to figure out their name? Or even if you managed to find out other things about this person, what was each group able to find? They live in New South Wales, yep. Yep, their gender is probably female, blonde hair. Yep, they're likely an adult. Possibly vegetarian / vegan. How'd you figure that out? Possibly works at Stryker in St. Leonard's, yeah. Was anyone able to figure out any hobbies? Maybe iron deficient because they've got iron tablets. Rock climbing, yeah. So they have gripping cream for rock climbing, and they also have a membership card. And they probably live somewhere around Bondi. Yep, so this is what you might have been able to find out. So we know that she's likely female. It might have been her birthday recently. Yep, so we have that Maya 1 card. Might work from home since they bought a monitor. Yep. They have blonde hair, and we can tell this from the blonde hair and the hairbrush, as well as the blonde toner that they purchased from Woolies. We can also see that they're probably vegetarian. Their name seems to be Kristen Smith, and we can tell that from the invoice for the monitor as well as the ClimbFit card. And the ClimbFit membership also tells us that they seem to be an avid climber. And something that you might have also noticed is that they likely have a car since they had to go to the fuel station to fill it up. And from all of these locations, we can map out where they might be. So we can see that they've got their ClimbFit up here and a fuel station down here. So it seems that they live somewhere in the eastern suburbs. All right, so that's it from the OSINT section. Feel free to type any other questions you might have in chat, and we'll also have a Q&A session towards the end. So I shall hand this over to Ada.
Cool. Can everyone see my screen? Awesome. Yeah, something I might add for that OSINT section, because I remember doing a similar exercise, is have a look through your own social media accounts, or maybe if you agree with a friend to look at their account as well. See what you can find out about each other and whether you're leaking more information online than you think you are. Because I remember looking through my Instagram, and then I had like a picture and I'm like, oh, you can tell what address this is if you tried really hard enough, and then just like archive that photo or something along those lines. So yeah, so that's something you can keep a look out for. Awesome. So so my section today is I'm going to be talking a little bit about cryptography. So particularly what cryptography is used for, and then we'll have a few ciphers that we can have a go at cracking and seeing how they've improved over times and things like that. So the basis of cryptography is around secrets. So people have been trying to hide secrets from each other long before computers existed. Like with a lot of security, its historical roots are in wartime. So two generals, for example, who might want to communicate with each other, tell them to strike an enemy at night, might not necessarily want that the other countries or their adversaries to read their message or intercept their message or even interfere with the message and change a message before it gets sent and received by someone else. So that's where the idea of cryptography came from, with crypto and graphy roughly translating to secret writing. Okay. So cryptography is, especially modern cryptography, is around the idea of designing systems for securing information. So now I have a question for the chat. So we send a lot of information from day to day. What are some things that we might want to keep secret? So if you have any ideas, type them in chat. What are some things we might want to keep secret? So Stella started us off with personal information. Yeah, that's a big one. Any examples of that? So bank account details if you're paying for something online. Home address, yeah. Daily activities, yeah, especially after that OSINT exercise, might be more wary of that. So daily activities, phone numbers, schedule, birthday, yeah. Password, that's a big one, yeah. Passwords, current location, age. Search data, I like that one. School or place of work. Yeah, so if you have any ideas, keep typing them in chat because there will be some I haven't thought of. So the main ones I have are your online like banking details, so your passwords, personal information, and yeah, your search and download history. So from the YouTube video you're watching or the fact that you're connecting to this call, we tend to value privacy because people should be free to do whatever they want without other people watching and seeing where they're going. Like imagine if you had access to someone's search results in Google, you could find out a lot about them. So we tend to want to keep things like that secure as well, not just our personal information. So this is where cryptography comes in. I've written here 4 goals for cryptography. So by encrypting information, there are 4 main things we want to achieve from that. So the first I have is confidentiality. So that's the main one we think of. So when you send someone a secret, or not even a secret, like even just a message, right? So if I want to tell Juliana, I'll meet you at the park tomorrow at 12 p.m. I don't want everyone else reading that. I just want her to read that message. Don't want like people intercepting and then figuring it out. Even if it's not something super secret, I still don't want other people reading my message. The second one is integrity. So I want to make sure that message hasn't been altered. So if you think about it, if I go like, I'm going to, like 2 generals go, okay, let's meet at the hill at midnight tonight, and someone else intercepts the message, they could change parts of it. So instead of saying the hill, they say, let's meet at the beach, and then send it to the recipient, and they never get the original message, and importantly, don't know that it's been changed. So we want to maintain integrity. The third is authentication. So we want to identify the sender. So if I ask your bank to give me $100, I want them to know that it's actually me asking and not just a random stranger pretending to be me. And the fourth one is non-repudiation, which is the sender can't deny sending the message. So if I make a contract and I'm in court, their court could be able to prove like beyond reasonable doubt that this person sent the message and they can't backtrack of that. So I have 4 diagrams here, and I'm going to give everyone about 1 minute to try to see if you can match those 4 cryptographic goals to each diagram. So don't type it in chat yet. You can type it in chat but don't hit send. So if you hit like shift enter, that goes to the next line. And then in about a minute's time, I'm going to ask everyone to click, or everyone who's written something to click send together and see if we can figure it out. So we'll call this top right, the top right, top left, bottom right. So yeah, so those are, so Abram sent a message with the 4 items on the last slide. So let's see if we can match the term to the picture. Also, I've noticed that I've named one of my characters Eve. This wasn't, I didn't intentionally, I realized there's someone called Eve in this call. I didn't intentionally name them Eve because I knew there's an Eve. It was just alliteration. I was like, oh, this sounds nice. Hence why we have Eves everywhere. Yes. If you think you have an idea, just type it, but don't click send yet. And in about 30 seconds, we'll see what we have. Okay, so I think that was roughly a minute. So if you have a few answers and you're typing, just click enter. And I think some people have DM'd it to me. That's fine as well. So feel free to either send it to everyone or message me. Cool. So we've got, ooh, all right. So I'll show you what I have. So I've got top left authentication, top right confidentiality, bottom left integrity, and then bottom right non-repudiation. So in this top right, I've got a situation where Eve is trying to buy dodgy gift cards online and sends a message to the bank that says, hello, I am Ada. I would like to withdraw $100 from my bank account. But here I am not actually consenting to $100 being drawn from my bank account. So if that succeeds, that's an example of an authentication problem. On the top right, we have confidentiality. So Alice is telling Bob, we strike at midnight, and Eve is just seeing that in plain text. So this message isn't being obscured. In the bottom, like left, right, bottom left, we have an example of integrity being an issue. So I'm telling the bank, please send Juliana $100. And Eve's changed the message, so it's changed the name. And the bank doesn't know that the message has been changed, so has just redirected the money to Eve. And this last one is an example of non-repudiation. So perhaps Eve has a contract to sell something for someone and says, like, if you pay me $100, I'll give you this TV. And then doesn't follow through and goes, you can't prove I sent that message, so not enforceable. So nice work to everyone who typed in chat. Okay. So now we've got that. Let's apply what we learned in the first session with Juliana about how you could think like an attacker and how that means you have more secure systems. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at a classic cipher. So has anyone ever seen this before, or maybe made one in your life? So you've got two circles, you maybe stab a pin in the middle and then spin it. I remember having this as like a toy when I was in my year 5 spy phase. Has anyone seen this before? Type yes in chat if you have, or if you haven't seen it, be like, I've never seen this in my life. Yes, we love these things. So this is a Caesar cipher, or one way you can encrypt and decrypt messages by shifting letters. So what a Caesar cipher is, it's one form of encryption by Julius Caesar in history. So what essentially happens is you shift letters forward or backwards in the alphabet by a certain amount. So in this example, I've set K, which stands for key, and this key is 3. So I'm saying every time I have a letter, shift it 3 letters forward. So A, if I want to type A, I'm going to type D instead. B, I'm going to type E instead, and so forth. So in the example hello, if you encrypt it by shifting everything 3 letters forward, it becomes like KHOOR, core. So what a Caesar cipher is it's a symmetric system. So both people have the same shared secret. So if I'm encrypting a message by shifting it 3 letters forward, and say, for example, Michael knows that's the secret, you're shifting it 3 letters forward, then he can shift it 3 letters back to get the decrypted message. But let's think like an attacker and see if there are any flaws, very, very clear flaws with this system that Julius Caesar did not see. So here's a message, and I'm going to give everyone 2 minutes to either 1, try to decrypt this message, or B, or 2, say how you would go about decrypting this message. So I'll give you around 2 minutes to do so, maybe a minute and a half, to have a think of either how you would crack it or maybe have a go at cracking it. So what is the secret message? And maybe once you're done, don't type in chat yet, and I'll say like click send, and we can all click send together. And if you do decrypt it, I would be interested to see how you decrypted it. So Abram's also typed the message in chat. Oh yeah, feel free to DM me that message as well. If you don't want to type it in chat, don't type it in chat just yet, but if you have the message, feel free to message me on Zoom. Okay, so I think we've hit 2 minutes. So if you've got an answer, feel free to type it to everyone in chat now. I did get a few messages from people who got it early. I like pasta. Wow, everyone likes pasta here. Me too, guys. I also like pasta. So that's my secret message to Juliana. I like pasta. Now let's take a step back and see, like, how did you figure out I liked pasta if I didn't tell you that the shift was 3 letters forward or back? How Ada tricked everyone into liking pasta. Yeah, so how did you figure it out? I'm interested to know. Because 1 letter was probably I, because it's used a lot. Yeah, that's a great strategy. So seeing like common things in the English language and then figuring things out from there. So trial and error with different keys. You can assume a single letter could have been A or I. Yeah. First letter most likely A or I. A didn't make sense. Wow. Okay, that's a really sophisticated method of doing that. Yeah, so that's one way you could do it. The second way, which is what I would have done because I'm slightly lazy, is to brute force attack it. So what a brute force attack is just trial and error through every possibility. And in this situation, since we're shifting letters along, there's only like, I think it's 26 letters in the alphabet. So you only have like 26 different possibilities. And it might take a long time by hand, but if you have an online tool, which exists, so this is the link I use, I just type Caesar Cipher decoder, you can brute force through every possibility. So here's my key, I like pasta. And you can imagine how someone with computing power could do that, just brute force through every possibility. Now let's take a look at this. So what we just did was called cryptanalysis. So what cryptanalysis is the art or process of deciphering coded messages without being told the key. So the key is the shared secret is what we call the key. So that's shifting forwards or backwards by 3. the plain text is the message that we want to encrypt, and the ciphertext is what's being encrypted after we go through our top secret encryption algorithm, which is probably what Julius Caesar said when he came up with that cipher. So the basis of security or thinking of things as an attacker is you always want to improve on it. So one way we can improve on the Caesar cipher is instead of shifting things forwards and backwards by a set amount, we substitute letters to a scrambled version. So here's a simple substitution cipher. So I've just randomly put letters in the alphabet here. And so A now maps P, B maps Q, etc., not necessarily in order. So my plain text hello now encrypts as XUOOB. No one could ever figure out that. Okay, so any ideas on how we could break a substitution cipher? Type in chat. And we did have a lot of sophisticated methods for the Caesar cipher. So Noah says, one-to-one letter substitution can be solved using letter frequency. Yeah. Any other ideas or insights? So my first thought is, why don't we just go through every single possibility like we did before? But as it turns out, there are a lot of possibilities. So if you haven't seen this exclamation mark before, that's a factorial. So we've got, so for each letter, it could be 26 other letters, and then the next letter is like 26 minus 1. So it's 26 times 25 times blah, 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 blah. And that is a really big number. So even if you had a lot of computing power, it's very hard to brute force through every possibility. But as Noah mentioned, and a few people when we were doing the Caesar cipher, is assuming our code is in English. English has a lot of patterns. So here's a graph of the frequency of letters for the English alphabet. So E is the most common letter, followed by T, etc., etc. And here's a ciphertext I have. And the frequency seems to correlate. So if I see T a lot, I could guess that maybe that letter is an E. The other thing we can look at is like n-grams. So I think a lot of people mentioned before, like since the first letter was a single letter, it's probably an A or an I. This could be scaled to larger clusters of letters. So a bigram, so if you see a T, H is often a common letter. If you see a Q, or if you figure out a letter's a Q, the next one's probably a U, as well as trigrams like V and an ing. So I have a passage here, and I think would someone, maybe someone else from SecSoc, would you be able to send them the paste bin link here? So I'm not going to give you time to figure this one out explicitly because substitution ciphers tend to take a lot of time. But if you figure it out by the end of today, I'll be quite impressed. So here's a passage, and the question is, what book is that passage from? So there's some links to tools there. So there's an online frequency analysis tool which tells you the frequency of characters, and you can guess which character is which. And there's also tools which have automated the brute forcing of likely possibilities. So what that means is perhaps they've seen 3 letters that come up a lot, and then they say 3 letters that come up a lot, and then automatically maps it to THE. So I already have someone DM, or a couple of people DM me a particular book series. I wonder how you figured that one out. But yes, I'll just say you can use clues outside of what's immediately obvious. So maybe my fun fact from the Kahoot might be a big hit. Yes, a lot of DMs. Congratulations. The question is, which Harry Potter book and what is the passage? That's the real challenge. The funny story is I didn't even think about that when I wrote my passage. So that really shows, like, I need to be thinking with that attacker mindset, not just going pat more Darnada for coming up with this unbreakable cipher. All right. Okay, so what is this diagram here? You're like, what? Cryptographic primitives? What does that even mean? So in cryptography, what we were looking at with the substitution cipher and the Caesar cipher falls into this second category here. So these are symmetric ciphers. So what that means is there's a shared secret between both parties, and the way you encrypt something and decrypt something relies on that secret. So that secret might be shift something forward by 3, and then the decryption method is shift that backwards by 3. That's one shared secret. But there are other categories for cryptography as well. There's something here that's quite interesting that I won't go into today called like hash functions in one-way permutations. So these don't have a key. It's if you encrypt something, it's possibly like mathematically impossible or like very close to impossible to undo that. So one way, oh, someone's already got the book. Okay, I'm not gonna look at the substitution cipher chat. In the meantime, and nice work, is once you encrypt something, it's hard to decrypt. And the reason you might want to do that is, say, for example, saying like, oh, I haven't changed this data since the last time I worked with it. So you encrypt it and you get a like long phrase. And then if you encrypt it again in the future, you get the same one. So that's 0 keys. And here's an interesting one that I will be talking about soon, which is when you have 2 keys. So a public key and a private key. So you have 2 secrets. Okay, let's take a look at this now. And I'm getting a lot of DMs with my book. Okay. So you might be asking, wow, that Caesar cipher, that substitution cipher is so easy to crack. Surely there is a code or a cipher where you can't crack it, right? And the answer is yes. There's something called a one-time pad. So what a one-time pad is this key that maps each kind of character in a phrase or a sentence or whatever you want to send in the plain text to something else. And like, say, for example, you shift it forward by L, by the number L or whatever L is in the alphabet. And then the next one, you shift it by A, so you shift it forward by 1, etc., etc. So that is our secret, the shared key. So in the past, they may have had like booklets or thick books that they send around and they keep secret from everyone else. So the 4 conditions for this to be true, like unbreakable, is 1, the plain text must be random. So not pseudo-random like English, where you can figure out how frequent letters are, but actually random. Secondly, at least as long as the plain text. So you can't figure things out by having things circle around. Third, you can't reuse that key in whole or in part. And fourth, it must be kept completely secret by communicating parties. And if all 4 conditions are true, then we've got an absolutely unbreakable code. Unlike my substitution cipher, which seems to have been cracked pretty quickly by a lot of people. All right. Okay. Maybe I'll reveal the book at the end for anyone else who hasn't gotten it yet. Cool. So we've got this absolutely unbreakable code, but we also have a problem, or both the problem and also not the problem, which is, what about over the internet? So when we had a shared secret, or maybe something like a one-time pad, maybe you had something written down, or maybe you went to a dodgy park and exchanged a book with someone, or you whispered in their ear or something like that. But when we are working with the internet, the problem is it's very hard to establish a secure connection in order to send that key in the first place. Because if I wanted to send a message to someone in Japan, or I wanted to send a message to Google so I have a secure connection to watch YouTube videos in peace, I can't just go meet up at a dodgy park and then swap secrets. That's very inconvenient and not scalable. So an important question in computer science, and an interesting one that's puzzled people for like many years, is how do you ensure a secure encrypted connection to like, how do you create a connection that is encrypted and secure when you don't have one that exists in the first place? So you need a secure connection to send the key, but you need a key to secure the connection. So like, panic, what do you do? Well, cryptographers have come up with something cool, and this is called public key cryptography. So just interested in chat, has anyone here heard of public key cryptography before, or is this a new concept? So just type in chat. So like, never heard of this in my life, or oh, I've heard of this before, never heard of it, new concept. Yeah. Yeah, so this was an extremely new concept for me when I first started like looking into cryptography and reading about it. So public key cryptography is an interesting concept because what it essentially lets you do is it lets you establish a secure connection between two parties who previously don't have a secure connection. Okay, so I'm going to pull up a diagram now. So this is pretty much, so now I'm going to go through how public key cryptography works. If you don't completely get it at first, it's fine, but just have a note, write down public key cryptography. And if you're interested in it, like have a research, Google, watch some videos and see if you can learn more. Okay, so public key cryptography essentially relies on us having two keys that are mathematically linked. So you have a public key, which everyone in the world knows, and you have a private key, which you keep secret. Anything you encrypt with the public key can be decrypted with the private key. So when we were looking at a symmetrical cipher, these were the same thing. So you move something, the secret is 3, you move it forward by 3. The secret is 3, you move it backwards by 3. But this time, these two are different. So you've got a public key and a private key. Anything you encrypt with the public key can be decrypted with the private key. And anything you encrypt with the private key can also be decrypted with the public key. And the foundation for that, it's cool maths. So we call this a key pair. Now, if I want to send a message to someone, then what I would do, or if someone wanted to share a message with me, what they could do is encrypt it with my public key. So that's something that everyone knows. So they encrypt it with my public key, and only I, with the private key, can decrypt that message, and no one else can without a lot of work. Something else I could do is I could encrypt something with my private key, and then anyone in the world can decrypt it with my public key. And you're wondering, why would you want everyone in the world to be able to know my secret? But by having something with my private key, and people know that public key is linked to me, and signing it, then they know that this is legitimate. So say, for example, if I was Google and I sign something with private key and says, I am Google, and someone establishes a connection, checks with the public key, and they say, okay, I can read this message, then I'm pretty sure this person is who they say they are. So that's the idea. A good analogy for this, but not a perfect analogy, is locks and keys. So say, for example, if Abram here wants to send me a message, Abram could buy a padlock and keep the key. So Abram has two things. It has a padlock and a key, and send me that padlock. If that padlock gets intercepted, nothing really happens because like anyone could get a padlock. And then what I could do is I could lock my message with that padlock. And for anyone else who wants to break that padlock, pretend it's a really hard to break padlock, it would take a lot of work. But for Abram, who has the key, once I send my message and like lock that lock, it's very easy for him to unbreak it. So that's kind of the principle of how computers use public key cryptography to establish a secure connection. So maybe in this envelope, I have another shared secret. And once I share that secret, then we can operate with the same key, similar to a cipher, but more complicated. But this is how you could establish a secure connection when you don't have a secure connection in the first place. So now, if you're interested in this, two things I would Google is the Diffie-Hellman key exchange. So that's a way for you to establish secure connections, and the RSA algorithm, which makes use of prime numbers and how hard it is to undo prime numbers. And Eddie Wu, my hero, has made a video to explain it, and it will be much clearer than if I tried to explain it. So note these down if you're interested. Diffie-Hellman key exchange and the RSA algorithm, especially Eddie Wu's content. And I'm sure Girls in Engineering will post on the Facebook group and all these links as well. So here's my last slide. So we have hit 3:25, so I will pass it on to Michael next, who will be talking about passwords and how to stay secure online. But here are some challenges if you're interested in solving them. Maybe if someone could post these in the chat as well, that would be really good. So how many ciphers can you solve? There's a great website here, and if you scroll down, you can, there are a few ciphers you could solve or encrypt or decrypt, and then you send it and then they tell you if you're right or not, as well as my substitution cipher, which a lot of people have got. If you haven't got it, Harry Potter was where that book is from, specifically the first book. And if you have programmed before, or you want to learn some like how you can apply maybe Python concepts you've learned in cryptography, you could have a go at coding up your own Caesar cipher, encryptor, or decryptor. And this is an extremely challenging challenge, and I mean very, very challenging, is you could have a go at coding up your own substitution cipher cracker. And this is a challenge for a university course, and like the course that I did as a student in our tutor, which is coding up your own substitution cipher. And I never managed to get it, but there have been people who have tried it. So if you're very bored these holidays, have a lot of time and resilience, feel free to have a go at these as well. So I'm going to send a replit in the chat. So this is my go at coding up a Caesar cipher encryptor and decryptor. So if you have a go at typing it yourself and want to compare answers, or not answers, but compare a different approach, feel free to look at that. Cool. And that's all I have from me. So I'm going to pass it on to Michael now. And if you have any questions, type it in chat and I'll try and answer them.
I'm just gonna share my screen. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. No, I can't see the chat. Okay, cool. Yes, so first thing I want everyone to do is go to this link, haveibeenpwned.com, and then just click it. You get into this and you can enter your email or phone number. Type one of those in, like your email you use for your accounts, and hopefully it'll turn green, meaning your passwords haven't been caught up in any leaks, data breaches, or it will turn red, which is very bad news because unfortunately you're being in a data breach, and it means your password has been leaked somewhere on the internet for everyone to see, which is not good news. If it turns red, it will also like show you which companies, like which websites have been breached. Have people? How do you know that website is safe? That's a very good question. It is very. No one have a good answer to. It's funded by an independent Australian researcher. So it's not asking for any of your passwords. It's just asking for your email and searching for it in publicly available data anyway. And hopefully it turns green. Does it turn red for anyone? Yes, it's made by that guy, Troy Hunts. Does it turn red or green? It turned red. That's good job. It turned green. Oh, it turned red. Yeah, looks like it's turning red for most people, which isn't a good sign, unfortunately. If it turns red, I would try and change your password to make sure it's no longer the compromised password that was leaked in that particular data breach, just to stay safe. But try to learn from those mistakes. How can we actually stay safe? So how can we prevent our passwords from being leaked? The first rule of thumb is obviously to have good passwords. If you have a good password, it'd be hard to guess. Therefore, people can't like randomly type in your email, type in password or 123456, press login and access everything. You might have seen these types of rules before. A lot of websites trying to enforce it, meaning like it won't let you have an account unless you have like an uppercase letter and a number at the end and a bunch of those like special characters. That's a really common like password protection rule. Some companies even make you like change your password every so often. Like unsw for its students makes it them change their password every year, which is really annoying for me. And so the end result is you get passwords like these like weird strings of numbers. Do people have experience with this? Do people like think this is a good idea to have passwords like this? Why or why not? Like a bunch of uppercase and lowercase letters and special characters like this. Do people think that's a good idea or a bad idea? If I can give a spoiler, yeah, excellent, Emma. It's very hard to remember. It turns out this is a terrible idea. This was all the rage for the past a few years ago. It was all the rage. Like a couple of decades ago to a few years ago, it was all the rage. People followed these rules religiously. Turns out it's a terrible idea. If my slides work, yeah. These are actually how you get very bad passwords. And the main reason is people don't remember these weird strings of characters. And if you don't remember it, then you have to reset your password, which might be very costly if there is no method of reset. Or when you reset it, you're probably going to pick like a very bad password, one that you can actually remember, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or a combination of your, I don't know, mother's maiden name or something. And also changing your password periodically, that discourages having a good password that's very hard to guess, because every time you change it, you're probably just going to add like 1 at the end, or change it to 2 next time you have to change it, or 3, or just like do something very simple. So those rules are actually scrapped a few years ago. That was scrapped officially. And instead, what you're advised to do is only change your passwords if there's evidence of compromise. That means, I don't know, Google, assuming you use like Gmail, sends you an email saying like, oh, there's been a breach, please change your password. Or you go into a website like have I been pwned and it comes up with red. That's what I mean by evidence of breach. There's a data like leak somewhere, your password's gotten out, you should change it, obviously, so that like no one else can just search up your account and get your password. But don't change it unnecessarily. Don't change it just because you'll probably replace it with a very easy and bad password. The next thing is that just make sure when you're entering new passwords, don't do something that's like being known to compromise. So really common passwords, like I guess like password is a classic example, have been involved in previous leaks. So what a good company should do, and which not many websites do, is prevent you from using a password that's been in the previous breach. Not many websites do that, so it's pretty much up to you to pick a good password that hasn't been in some like massive like 100 million account leak of some big website. And in fact, we're explicitly saying don't use those bunch of random character combination rules where you have like uppercase characters and lowercase characters, a mixture of that. Yeah, because people don't remember that. The extra weird thing, which you might not have thought of, is trying to include like white space, so just space inside your password, or even emojis. Unfortunately, not many websites support this because they're behind the times. But if they do support this, you should use like emojis in your password, because not many people have passwords with emojis in them. And there are also a lot of emojis and not that many like upper and lowercase characters. There's thousands of emojis, right? Compared to like 26 lowercase passwords and 26 uppercase passwords. Excellent. Yeah, excellent point, Anna, about like Google generally suggests you use like a bunch of random long passwords, kind of like this. And that's because they generally expect you to use it in a password manager. And so the hip new thing these days is instead of having a bunch of passwords, have like a piece of software, a secure like store of passwords, have like tons of passwords, and then have like a master password, which lets you access this like mega store of passwords. It's like a password just to access all of your passwords. And so Google, I think they generate these really strong passwords for you, which are impossible to remember, but then they'll store in a way that only you can access them. And they'll also fill it for you, so you never have to remember those. I'll explain that a bit more in a second, but the other official recommendation is to allow people to copy and paste it so you can access the password manager so that you don't have to remember all your passwords. The end result is that a good password actually looks like correct force battery stable. There's actually a comic to explain this. Don't actually use this password. This is a good example of a password, but this is actually a really famous comic. So I would advise you doing like famous passwords as your password. That's generally a bad idea. But have passwords that look like this. So instead of having a bunch of like capital letters, gibberish, unknown characters, random punctuation marks, which you're probably not going to remember, humans aren't designed to remember this type of stuff, but they're also like not that hard for computers to crack. Because think about it, there's only like 26 lowercase letters, 26 uppercase letters, 10 numbers, 10 digits, a few punctuation characters. Compare that to tens of thousands of like common English words, right? Tens of thousands of common English words. And so if you instead just like get a bunch of common English words, jam them together in a password, that's actually going to be quite easy for you to remember, because of, you can like think about like a cool comic like this, horse saying that's a battery staple, and then someone saying yes, correct, that's a battery. That's easy to remember, and because there were so many common words, it's actually hard for computers to crack. Now, going back to password managers, these days you actually really want to remember just one password, a mega strong master password. And if you use it as a password manager, I think Google already provides you one. You can just like sign into this password manager and access all your other passwords, which can be super strong, which can be a random bunch of characters, which can be like 100 characters of just like upper and lowercase letters, like Google often suggests. If that's the case, every single one of your like accounts will have a super strong password that you can possibly remember, that computer couldn't possibly crack, and that's fine because you don't have to remember it. The computer like does all the remembering for you, and you're just like at the very easy task of just having to remember a single password. It also has the advantage of, since it's doing the remembering for you, you're inclined to like use a different password each time, because like there's no cost to you. Whereas if you use the same password, if one of them gets leaked, then all your other accounts are vulnerable. Google and I think Firefox have these password managers in their browser. Although I personally use Bitwarden, which is a really secure piece of software. It's also free, so you can put your passwords on one computer, access them on your phone. It's free. It's really secure. If you're like worried about how secure it is, all the code behind Bitwarden is actually on the internet for free as well. So if you're like suspicious towards how secure Bitwarden is, you can view the code yourself. That's like one way to guarantee security. It's also being like independently verified by other experts who have nothing to do with Bitwarden, so it's pretty secure. There are others too. Like, I'm not some Bitwarden fangirl. I just like it because it's free and it's secure. I think OnePass is also pretty secure, but it's not free. So I generally just advise people to use Bitwarden. Yes, and the last thing is also, you might have heard of like two-factor authentication. Try to turn those settings on if you can. I know it's really annoying, but it's really useful because it makes data breaches just much harder. So you can think of it as this way. There's 3 types of ways to authenticate yourself, right? There's something you have. So when you're at your house, your apartment, and trying to get inside, you have a key. You just want to get the key. It's something you have to prove that you're like a resident of this apartment, of this house, to get inside. There's also something you are. So that's like a fingerprint. I think fingerprint scanners are quite popular these days. So like it shows physically who you are. These aren't necessarily always the best idea because of one thing about fingerprint scanners is that if someone like copies your fingerprint, you can't really change your fingerprint. So you're kind of screwed if someone like leaks your fingerprint. Like, unless you somehow change your fingerprint, it's kind of stuck as breached. Although there are like fancy fingerprint scanners that like detect you're alive as well. So who knows? And there's also something you know. So this is just your password. Something you know, the password is super common. And so what you often want to do is combine something you know, which most websites have, just the password, with something you have, like your phone. Like I've got my phone here. You can access your phone, get a code from it, and that just proves 2 things: to be super certain of who you are. You know something that only I'm supposed to know, and you have something that only I am supposed to have, so therefore you must be me. SMS is generally quite common. Like an SMS that just sends you a text and says, here's a code, put this in. That's pretty decent. SMS is actually a bit dodgy though, so I recommend using something like Google Authenticator, which if you're like, this is dependent on like some websites let you use like Google Authenticator, some don't. If they do it, I highly advise you do it. But like, it's an app. It generates a code for each of your like websites you use, and it resets the code every 5 minutes. So it's super safe. And just lastly is don't fall victim to spam. So don't click on weird links because of someone else asked like, how can I trust the other website? Because if you just have a random website, which you don't know is safe, and you just give it your account details, that's game over. You've given someone your password and your email to some dodgy website, which you don't know is safe. They can just go back to the real website, log in as you, and unless you have two-factor authentication on, you're kind of screwed. So one thing some companies get around this, especially banks, is they will never send you links. They'll only send you like, there's an important update. Please check your accounts. But to prove we're not spam, actually log in, go to the website, Google it yourself, log in that way, and you'll find a message saying, please do this. Because then they can say, like, if you ever get a text message saying, click on this link, or an email, it's spam, don't click on it. Not all companies do this. Like, if it's a not important website, they'll probably just send you a link. But financial companies generally are super paranoid, so they just won't send you links. And also, yeah, it's super common to get that type of spam. So also just have a look at the links before you click on it. Like in this text message here, it has like .icu, westpac.icu, which you can probably figure isn't actually westpac.com. So it's probably a fake email, but easily just don't click it and you're safe anyway. I think that's it actually from this whole presentation. So I think it's our Q&A. Just to recap on what I said earlier, main rule, if I can teach you anything, is you should change your passwords if you go into have I been pwned and it turned red. If it turned red, change your passwords. If not, you should hopefully be safe. I'll stop showing my screen so you can see everyone again.